Can I just say one thing firstly? I love the name Eat Sleep Boxing Repeat.
Hello and welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted to be joined tonight by Niall and special guest who is a regular special guest these days, Ra Hocum of Punch Out Boxing. We're here tonight in big fight breakdown mode ahead of a huge upcoming rematch between Paddy Donovan and Lewis Crocker. Highly controversial ending to the first fight. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more fireworks in the build-up come fight night also. As always, for those tuning in, plenty of fight week content will be coming, especially for this fight over the next couple of weeks. Lads, thank you so much for joining me tonight. We're going to jump straight into it. As I said when I opened this video, highly controversial ending to a fight which Paddy Donovan was dominating. I'm going to start with you, Niall. Maybe you felt the fight went a bit differently, but hopefully you agree with myself that Paddy Donovan was dominating the fight on the inside, on the outside. What do you think Lewis Crocker needs to do differently in this fight? It was a question before the fight, who was the power puncher of the two, who had the more power. So what do you think Lewis Crocker needs to do to win this fight without a disqualification?
Yeah, it was Paddy Donovan was definitely ahead, even without the Irish rose tinted glasses on. Paddy Donovan was dominating, he really was. Lewis Crocker, what he needs to do differently, in my opinion, is he can't kind of be in that center ring like they were the last time. He needs to eliminate the angles for Paddy Donovan. Trap him against the ropes, get him up on his chest. That dirty boxing in, work the body. Just he needs, yeah, as I say, he needs to get his back, Paddy Donovan's back pressed up to the ropes, and be busy when he's there. Now, whether he has the ability to do that is another question. That was a big kind of wake up call for a lot of people last time on Lewis Crocker, the kind of discrepancy in skill level, but he needs a really fast start here to be able to do that. Don't let Paddy Donovan settle into any rhythm whatsoever. And as I say, don't let Paddy take the center of the ring and be able to use his footwork, use his kind of his angles and his punching combination. So yeah, get him up to the ropes and work that body, but it has to be a very fast start.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, there was varying predictions before the fight. I think a lot of people had it down as a 50-50, and from the first bell, it looked nothing like a 50-50. Same question to you, Ra. Do you agree with Niall? Do you think Lewis Crocker needs to come flying out the blocks, command centre ring early, dictate the fight, dictate the pace? And do you think he's got the ability to do so?
Yeah, I agree with what Niall said about why Paddy was effectively had to wrong foot Lewis pretty much all night. What does he have to do? I mean, he'd have to either develop or show a skill set which we've not seen yet before. I'm not convinced he has the ring craft to to do any of those things. We've never seen it before. Up till now, he's effectively just been relying on being very aggressive, tough, and game for a fight against opponents who themselves are pretty limited, and it's worked this far. I don't know if he's sort of bought into his coach Billy's claims that he's one of the hardest hitters pound for pound and all of this. Maybe he does have more boxing ability that he's just not, brought out yet. But yeah, from what we've seen of his career so far, I don't think he has. We've certainly not seen that he's got the ability to, to sort of catch up to someone like Paddy, who showed he is every bit the very well schooled boxer.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair. Hopefully, we won't be hearing, Billy Nelson talk about Lewis Crocker the way he does Martin Bacoli. He's saying he's got pound for pound power. Hopefully, he's not another pound for pound sparring champion, and he can show it on the night. Sticking with you, Ra, we've almost spoke about what Lewis Crocker needs to do. I was one of few that predicted Paddy Donovan would stop Lewis Crocker. Not many people thought that would take place. The odds didn't favour a Paddy Donovan stoppage either. Do you think Paddy Donovan has the power to legitimately stop Lewis Crocker? I feel, it probably should have stood, but that maybe that's, from a tinted perspective, as I had money on it and, it needed the finish from Paddy Donovan. But do you think Paddy Donovan has the power to legitimately stop Lewis Crocker?
Well, he effectively almost did. If you mean like a clean knockout, no, he's probably not a puncher of that caliber. But through accumulation, I mean, that wasn't mostly legitimate punches that closed the eye, and I'm inclined to think, yeah, you can do the same thing again through accumulation, get a genuine stoppage. No, I don't see him putting on a Inu or Wilder type single shot flat on his back. No, he's not a puncher like that. But I definitely think he hits hard enough to stop Lewis properly this time, even without an injury. Like I said, maybe through accumulation down the stretch.
Yeah, I think it's more than fair to say, Paddy Donovan hasn't got God-gifted power. He's not going to go in there and blast Lewis Crocker out. And, when we say that, like you say, the Wilder-esque knockouts, and you think of what Joe Cordina did. You think of what Lee Wood's done in the past of that sort of one-punch get out of jail card. But same question to you, Niall. Do you think Paddy Donovan can stop Lewis Crocker this time around? So like I say, some people thought it was after the bow. It was the correct decision. A lot of people thought that he did stop him. So, taking any controversy aside, could you see Paddy Donovan stopping Lewis Crocker?
Yeah, absolutely. Raz hit the nail on the head there, to be honest with you, and what he said. It won't be a one punch job, but accumulation. Like the first fight when he was hitting him from everywhere, different angles. Mix it, the variety of punch combinations. They all add up. And as Raz said as well, the facial damage. Although the point there was the controversy, the facial damage was proven to be by punches. So he has a decent knockout ratio, but yeah, it won't be a one punch knockout. It'll be accumulation. If it was anything to body as well, body work could be key for Paddy Donovan here as well as Lewis Crocker, like I said earlier. But yeah, I really do think Paddy Donovan has every chance of stopping Lewis Crocker. I really do. I think, yeah, as you say, there was the controversy last time. The after the bell shot was naughty, but if we're being realistic, he sort of already has stopped him once. So yeah, he could do it again. I really do think he could do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, it was definitely after the bell, but, some people I've seen on Twitter, people timing it, say how long it was. I personally think in a combination of punches, when you're throwing them as aggressively as he was and with as much spite as he was, he can't just stop dead there and then. So it's a difficult one. I think there's a lot of, like you say, rose-tinted glasses from Paddy Donovan's side, a lot from Lewis Crocker's side. So I think there's questions that need to be put to bed. However, we've seen some strange trilogies in boxing. We've just seen Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, a trilogy where Katie Taylor, I know they were close, but on paper, Katie Taylor was 2-0 up. There's no need for a trilogy. Should Paddy Donovan get the job done, Niall, on the 13th? Could we see a trilogy here? Is it almost result dependent? If Paddy Donovan goes in there, batters Lewis Crocker from pillar to post and stops him in 3 or 4 rounds, does that put it to bed? Or do you think, if it goes late into the night, it goes very like rounds 8, 9, 10, as we get very late into the fight, Billy Nelson would probably likely say, find an excuse and want another fight. So do you think we could see a trilogy here?
Yeah, you make a good point in that after Taylor Serrano, who knows, what the future would be like for trilogies, and that was a bit of a pointless one. But yeah, I think if Paddy Donovan, no, I won't kind of spoil my prediction yet, but if Paddy Donovan does widely outclass Lewis Crocker like he did in that first fight, it has to put it to bed, surely. I know there's the big kind of the big carrot now, the world title, also available on the line for this one. But yeah, if Paddy Donovan does what a lot of people expect him to do now after that first fight, it has to put it to bed. Even Billy Nelson, I don't think would come up with massive excuses again, and that's saying a lot with his history. But yeah, the only way that people would want to see a trilogy is if Lewis Crocker kind of shocks a lot of people and can really adjust and alter his game plan to give Paddy Donovan a hell of a fight, even if he comes up short. Well, if Lewis Crocker does pull this off, there could definitely be a trilogy. I wouldn't really complain about seeing a trilogy. But even if it's a tremendous fight, if it's the fight that people expected it to be before the first bell and the first one, then yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a trilogy. But Lewis Crocker has a lot to do to earn that right for a trilogy for me.
Completely agree with everything you've just said there. And the one thing I want to pick up on is, like you say, if the fight is how it was predicted to be before the first bell of the first fight, I think we definitely see a trilogy. If we see a back and forth, if Crocker stands up to the power a little bit more, if Crocker trades a little bit more, if it's not as one-sided as it was. Stranger things have happened in boxing, but it's clearly showing, we're going to be looking at a near sellout, if not a sellout at Windsor Park. So you've got the Irish contingent that we want in this. Obviously, the fight's in Belfast as well. So, there's a lot of needle in this. Same question to yourself, Ra. Is it a trilogy you'd want to see? Is it result dependent? Do you think we could see it? Should Lewis Crocker win? Does that put it to bed? Should Paddy Donovan spank Lewis Crocker? Does that put it to bed? What do you think on the chances of a potential third fight between the two?
Yeah, like you said, it is result dependent. It's 1-0 to Lewis, but a very big asterisk against that win. So, if you're talking about what, an immediate rematch or no, sorry, an immediate trilogy. No, it would have to be, again, a very competitive, maybe even another controversial ending for that to happen. And of course, if Lewis somehow, if he does pull it off, because most people do think, well, Paddy was dominant in the first fight, even though the result didn't go his way. But if Paddy is dominant and wins legitimately, can't see any grounds for an immediate trilogy. It's the sort of fight that I guess late in their career, when they're out of options, they both might revisit it sort of as a farewell, one last thing. But no, if Paddy gets a conclusive win, he's got plenty of options and big fights at welterweight. And in fact, obligations, because we know the IBF will probably order an immediate mandatory because it's a vacant belt that he's won. So there's things like that. But yeah, it will be very much result dependent as to whether we get a quick trilogy.
Yeah, again, I completely agree with yourself there. I don't think there'd be an immediate rematch unless, Paddy Donovan gets the win this time in highly controversial circumstances again. And then I suppose there's a need for the third and a hope of a normal fight and a normal ending. I think should Paddy Donovan win, regardless of how he wins, I don't think he'd look to have this fight again in the future, because in his eyes and his head, he'll be 2-0 up. Whereas I could see, if Lewis Crocker, no matter how he loses, I could see him wanting this fight again at some stage. Billy Nelson seems a very stubborn man when it comes to his fighters. And I don't think there's any change in his mind. So I think Paddy Donovan could knock Lewis Crocker out with the first punch that lands. And you still wouldn't change Billy Nelson's opinion on this. So I think, should the right result go the right way, but I think we will see Lewis Crocker at least attempt to get a third fight out of this. As always, gents, it's come to that time in these videos. Niall, I'm going to go to you first. Who wins this fight and how?
Yeah, I think we've spoken about the possibility of a Paddy Donovan stoppage, and I think he gets it. I think he fights a more disciplined fight this time. Not that he was massively ill-disciplined the first time, but he is aware of the pitfalls that he fell into, and he's just way too versatile for Lewis Crocker. You know, we knew that Lewis Crocker was fairly one-dimensional coming into the first fight, even though, you know, it was effective for him. But the Paddy Donovan fight highlighted how one-dimensional Lewis Crocker is in terms of his flat-footedness, you know, his punch variety, his kind of versatility. It's just Paddy Donovan is just levels above him, and you know, I think even it might be a bit of a bold statement, but I think Lewis Crocker is kind of highlighted power is overrated, to be honest with you. I think he's not as big of a puncher as some people might have you believe. You know, he knocked out Jose Felix, who was a, you know, definitely not a welterweight. You know, he couldn't put a dent in Tyrone McKenna. Went life and death with Conor Walker. So I think the power is even massively overrated. So yeah, I just think he doesn't do a lot better than Paddy Donovan. Paddy Donovan does most things better than Lewis Crocker. So I'll go for a Donovan stoppage. I'd say eight, rounds 8 to 10. Donovan stoppage for me.
And yourself, Ra, are you making it 2-0 Donovan? Do you see Lewis Crocker making the necessary adjustments?
Yeah, I'm not going to be the contrarian on this one. I do actually agree with Niall in terms of I think Crocker will do what Niall suggested, because he hasn't got any more craft to bring. So I think he'll simply do the same things he always does, but try doing it harder and faster to start with. So I think it might be, he might have some success early on for a couple of rounds, but once Paddy's sort of worked out and, you know, seen what he's doing, he'll reassert control. Like I said, I think maybe start punishing the body to sort of wear him down, and then yeah, I think within 10 rounds he'll probably get a stoppage. Probably stopping Crocker on his feet, maybe after a knockdown, and then a flurry afterwards. Something along those lines. That said, given the way the first fight went, and the needle between them, and the sort of vibe you're likely to get from the crowd, which my understanding is the vibe could be very ugly from the crowd, I wouldn't be surprised if we get another controversial ending. Like if there's things like fouls put in, you know, a cut which is caused by, you know, reasons that both, you know, both corners argue the other side was to blame for. Something like that, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that happens again. So, but my prediction is a Paddy Donovan stoppage in 10 rounds.
Surprisingly for the viewers, it's a video with myself and a video with Ra where it's 3-0 to one fighter. There's no controversial or outlandish picks. I'm going to agree with you both. However, I'm going earlier. I think I agree with Niall's assessment that Lewis Crocker has to come out firing early. And I think that's just going to play into Paddy Donovan's hands. I think Donovan is levels and levels and levels above Lewis Crocker when it comes to boxing ability. I think, like Niall said, everyone was aware Lewis Crocker was one-dimensional. And I think Paddy Donovan has exposed how one-dimensional he is. And I honestly think Paddy Donovan wins this by however he wants. Personally, I think it'll be done in rounds 5 or round 6. First half of the fight, as we get to the halfway point, I think Lewis Crocker is going to come out firing first round, 2 rounds max, and then I think we're just going to see Paddy Donovan punish him for 3 or 4 rounds and break him down and get the stoppage. So yeah, we're all in unison, 3-0 to Paddy Donovan. All going Paddy Donovan stoppages at varying stages of the fight. But let us know down below in the comments, guys, what you think. Is it going to be a Paddy Donovan masterclass? Is Paddy Donovan going to overestimate Lewis Crocker and his ability? Is Lewis Crocker going to make the necessary changes? Or is Lewis Crocker completely finished on the night? As always, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think. And once again, gentlemen, thank you for joining me tonight.
Cheers. Take care.